CHGO Cubs Podcast. We're talking Cubs roster moves, former World Series ring winner returns, some other notes from the GM meetings, and some realistic free agent targets for the Cubs in MLB free agency. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast coming at you live at 1:30 on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Got a lot to talk about today. Free agency has obviously officially begun. GM meetings are underway. Jed Hoyer's talking. We got a packed show for you today. Obviously, I'm Ryan Herrera. Nate Poppen, y'all met him yesterday on the show. And in the middle, we got Patrick Norton.
Hello.
Cody, still on his 2-week vacation to Mexico. Luke is continuing to extend his stay indefinitely, so we'll see when he returns.
Put him on waivers.
Yeah, well, yeah, we should.
Yeah, it is.
DFA.
It is 40-man.
Luke
decision time.
DFA.
Yeah.
Does he make the 40-man? Yeah.
CHGO 40-man decision time, and Luke Stuckmeyer maybe one of those non-tender decisions. But guys, we're gonna get into a lot on the show today. But I do have to start with one of the moves the Cubs made yesterday. The biggest news of the Cubs offseason so far. Rob Z is back with the Cubs.
Love it. Yeah. And anytime you can get some 2016 vibes going, I'm all for it. Because there's not, a couple years from now, there's not going to be any of those players left. So might as well do it while you can.
Not enough respect for my Big Z. He's my Big Z.
Your Big Z.
Yeah.
So the Cubs claimed Rob Z off. It's Rob Zastryzny, right?
It is exactly how it is spelled.
Yes. All right. So Rob Zastryzny, or just Rob Z if you struggle saying the name, claimed him off waivers from the Brewers yesterday, and in a corresponding move, designated Jimmy Herget for assignment. Rob Z is obviously a former Cub, like we said. He tweeted out, like, "Hey, Chicago, what do you say?" Quote tweeted that the Cubs official tweet. Also asked if anyone knows somebody handy in Photoshop that could do an edit with a Cubs uniform on him. I like the tweet anyway. I thought it was funny. Obviously, he's a former Cub. Haha.
Engagement framing, really.
Yeah, right. And then our own Patrick Norton hops in with said, "Sorry, this was the best I could do on short notice." And what is this? Was this made on Snapchat?
No, just an Apple edit.
An Apple edit.
Yep. Zoomed in as far as I could so that I could get the pinstripes. I'm a terrible artist.
Well, this is better than anything I could have done.
This is third grade level.
And then Rob Z loved it so much, said it was his favorite by far, and made it his profile picture. So first thing I got to ask you, Patrick, is how does it feel to be best friends with Rob Z now?
This is a long time coming, really. Rob Z and I go way back in that I have loved him since 2016. Was just a scrappy reliever. Got a couple spot starts.
What do you pitch, like 8 games in 16?
Something like that. I don't think I ever pitched more than 10 games in a year with the Cubs. And that, to me, is exactly the type of role that I could have carved out with a professional baseball team. Back in the day.
There you go.
Could have gone pro.
It's, he's... People love him. Cubs fans love him. I mean, again, like I said, he didn't pitch much in 2016. But
I thought you were talking about me.
No. I love you, Patrick. I don't know about Cubs fans.
I love you too.
But he is also someone that, I think anyone that contributed to that 2016 season at any point is like a fan favorite for good.
Sure.
I mean, people obviously soured on some of the guys that ended up playing longer than 2016.
Sure.
You can name a few of them, but
I can think of a couple. Yeah.
But overall, it's like anyone that contributed to that run is pretty well favored.
That's how it goes with any championship team. I mean, you think about the Blackhawks, and it's like Chris Versteeg, fan favorite, and it's like Chris Versteeg was He was actually back in 2015.
Yeah, right.
And
the Ben Eagers of the world.
Yeah. Ben Eagers a great example. Jamal Mayers. We love Jamal Mayers. 100%. But anyway, yeah.
So if you're not watching on YouTube, by the way, Sarah, our producer, she's on the sticks today. She did put up the graphics with Patrick's excellent drawing of Rob Z in a Cubs uniform. So you go check it out on YouTube or just go on his Twitter and find it.
Yeah, so he made it his profile picture.
He did make it his profile.
And that is, I have never felt so honored by anything in my life.
Is that your biggest point of pride so far?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I am currently working on the Bears beat this year, and like it's something that I dreamed about. I'd quit today if it meant that Rob Z kept that as his profile picture for the rest of my life.
For the rest of time, right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's news. I mentioned Jimmy Herrera getting designated for assignment. He was claimed off waivers from the Braves in September, was assigned to Iowa, never actually got called up. I think he was due for arbitration, so was a decision that wasn't going to be made. The Cubs still had to make 4 more cuts after that because it was a 1-for-1 replacement. So Yency Almonte, Christian Bethancourt, Colton Brewer, and Enoli Paredes cleared waivers and all elected free agency, opened up the rest of the 40-man spots that were needed. So Adbert Alzolay, Ben Brown, Luke Little, Julian Merriweather, Nick Madrigal, and Brennan Davis were reinstated from the 60-day IL, and the Cubs' 40-man roster is now set at 40. Any of those guys potentially moving on surprise you?
Not really. No, I mean those all kind of made sense. Like looking at the list that I had from yesterday of like the potential like non-tenders and cuts, whatever. Only really 3 guys jumped out to me that were like, "Hey, this is obviously definitely back." I'm still anticipating, that the moving guys off the IL back onto the 40-man. Maybe you're just buying time to make decisions. Because I really don't think. I mean, if Nick Madrigal makes his team out of camp, we're in pretty bad shape. So,
or Nick Madrigal has had a renaissance and he's turning this thing. Possible.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen.
And he got a lot taller.
I would say for me, the Yency Almonte one, sort of surprises me. I think I thought he was more of like a guy who could have obviously gotten a contract. It wasn't a clear-cut decision for me. Obviously, he had the shoulder injury that ended his season about midway, sometime in June.
Right.
But they got him in that Michael Busch trade. Obviously, gave up 2 younger prospects, but prospects with potential. Mm-hmm. Michael Busch was the big pickup in that trade. But Yency Almonte was also involved in that. And I think he had his struggles to begin the year, but he kind of turned into one of those guys that was really gaining Craig Counsell's trust as a reliever, as a back-end reliever, and had success there at a point when they were still trying to figure out roles and who fits where and what guys they could trust, right? And obviously, not only Almonte, but like Merriweather, Alzolay struggles and then injury. Like they had a lot of that just kind of throwing things up in the air as far as the bullpen goes. So I thought Almonte started to emerge as a guy that could be trusted back there. Injury played a part in the injury obviously plays a part in that, and we never really got any recent updates on like his timeline when he's going to be ready. So maybe this is like something that's going to stretch into the season. This is speculation, of course. Something that might stretch into the season, and they want to bring him back on like a minor league deal. That way, he's not. They can open a 40-man spot and keep him in the organization, monitor the rehab, and then if and when the time comes, potentially can bring him back up, right? I think that's a possibility. What do you guys think of that?
I think that makes sense. I mean, he is a guy who did bounce back from a rough start to the year, as you said. Mm-hmm. And then just kind of getting into that injury, it was not only one that hurt. It hurt the Cubs a lot too, and in terms of just overall depth, but also it felt like he was someone who might be on a trajectory to take the reins when Adbert went down too, or even just at least provide a little back end like reliability when he was performing well. And then you had Merriweather down at that point too. It is one that I am a little surprised that he is not back, but I also think that it's more likely than not, at least in my eyes, that he would be back in the mix by spring training.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the surprise might be telling that maybe the injury is a little more long term than maybe we were suspecting, when it happened. So maybe, if you're Jed, if you're Carter, you're thinking, okay, if this guy's not going to be ready till, June, July to go full bore, why am I going to waste a 40-man spot on him now? Like, make that decision later on, like you said, Ryan, with the potential minor league deal, something like that. Well, I think would make a lot of sense, and especially, like you said, a guy that has had before the injury earned Craig Counsell's trust back there with, at times there weren't a lot of options that were very trustworthy at the back end of that bullpen, or even front end of the bullpen for that matter, last season. So yeah, definitely a guy that could still be back. It's just more of a matter of like, in what capacity and when does that happen?
Yeah, I think the other one that jumped out was Christian Bethancourt. Obviously came in later in the year. I want to say either right before the trade deadline or right after, like right around that time, and hit pretty well, played solid defense behind the plate, like fit in as that second catcher with Miguel Amaya, who was having a really good run there for a while. It's a route they could have taken as running it back. I never looked at it as like the route they should take. I think Christian Bethancourt, another guy that was due arbitration. I don't remember the exact number, but it was higher, obviously. And it looks like they figure that money could be better served addressing the catching position in a different way. Another guy that's possible could try to bring him back on a minor league deal, or going to spring training invite, minor league deal, that kind of stuff. Have as a depth catcher. It kind of depends on what Bethancourt wants at this point in the year. But that's obviously something we'll have to watch out for.
Are you sure he didn't play himself into a multi-million-dollar deal with
the Christian Bethancourt game?
Yeah,
7 RBIs. Yeah. 7 RBIs in Pittsburgh. Like
yeah, he did himself into a real steal.
I mean,
he also helped defensively a lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that was, I think, his greatest value to this team was stepping into that role that Yan Gomes just could not do anymore.
He just couldn't fill it anymore.
Yeah,
and even Tomas Nido, right? Like Tomas Nido wasn't great, but then he got hurt too, and it was like
he had a triple, I think, or something like that. One of his only games here. And
I think there's options out there in free agency, though, and maybe even some options, in the minors. Who knows? But
even
being 33, due probably around 1.5, 1.6 in arbitration. I just didn't, kudos to him for that one game with the 7 RBI, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna.
He had clutch hits on an 83-win team, so
right.
No, yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like they have options and needs to address in the catching position. I do think that there's potential for upgrades.
Yeah.
As far as like, I don't know that they're going to go out and get this clear number one catcher and Miguel Amaya as a full-time backup, but there are options out there that could pair with Miguel Amaya at catcher and feel like an upgrade. We'll get to some of those as well, but yeah, I kind of expected this based on what he was going to be, what his estimated arbitration number was, based on obviously the need to cut down to the 40-man and just the need to upgrade at catcher. I think this was something that I would probably have leaned more towards that way than not.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. Yep.
Great.
I'm fearful of telling you that you're right. I don't
want
to inflate that ego.
He's another guy that could still be available, at the end and towards spring training. And if plans fall apart, hey, backup plan. So,
yeah, and then that's part of my point as well is like maybe he plays himself into a backup catcher role, right? Somewhere else in the league, and that's kudos to him for that. If he can, sure. If he ends up securing that, good for him.
10
for
years.
Sure. Maybe he secures a major league deal somewhere.
Sure.
But if that doesn't happen, could always be a potential depth option for the Cubs at catcher, and obviously they always need depth at basically every position, but catcher, especially veteran catcher, is a big one of those. Before we get to some of the updates from the GM meetings, I do want to tell you about some of our sponsors. Let's kick it off with our sponsor, Blue Moon. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball, but only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. Beer and baseball just go together, and no beer goes better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. Blue Moon was created at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado. It's the natural choice for opening day and all season long and all off season long as well.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Moon fits in for every season, especially up here in Chicago. We know we have the seasons change all the time, but nothing fits better than the Blue Moon. Why strike out with the same old beer when you can get something one of a kind? A beer this good only comes around once in a Blue Moon, but you can enjoy it all season long. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I also want to tell you guys about our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You know, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. You think Steph Curry will get more than 4 3-pointers next week? Anthony Edwards for more than 27 points? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Guys, we're coming off, I guess, today's technically the first day of the GM meetings. Jed Hoyer met with the media yesterday, provided some updates, gave some quotes. Obviously, the big one I want to talk about is Nico Hoerner. Was it right flexor tendon surgery? Little under a month ago. That was a surprise when we found that out when that news dropped. At the time, no real update or no real timeline, and kind of a murky future on like if he will be ready by opening day. I think we're still sitting. What Jed Hoyer told reporters down in San Antonio for the GM meetings, there's still no update as far as the timeline goes for Nico Hoerner. They do expect a full recovery for him, but sitting here today with no timeline for him, just how do you feel that impacts the offseason, the Cubs offseason approach, if it does at all?
Changes it completely, because going into it, he was probably the guy that was going to be mentioned in more trade rumors than anyone.
Right.
And was even by the end of the season, where it was, hey, he'd fit in well with Seattle. He'd fit in well in, wherever. Now you have to pivot, and I'm fine with that because I like Nico Hoerner. And for all of the faults that people attribute to him, which I sometimes think is a little unfair, because your second baseman isn't traditionally going to be hitting for a lot of power. He's going to be playing
not everyone's Jose Altuve. Right?
Sure, he's going to be playing great defense and hopefully bring you a speed element and a contact element. And the contact wasn't great last year, but the speed not unrivaled, but it's right where it needs to be, and the defense was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you'd want to. I don't know why you'd be so willing to move on from that, except for the reason that, like, hey, you have players coming up, and hey, you want to be able to find a spot for Isaac Paredes or something like that. But this injury, it helps keep him around, which I don't mind, but it definitely changes your off-season outlook.
Yeah, it leads to less flexibility for Jed Hoyer, obviously. There's a couple names like, maybe say a Suzuki that could have been attractive trade chips, if you're trying to sort of change the roster but not do a complete overhaul. And now, especially after the Cody Bellinger news, you have a lot more clarity with where your roster is, where your total salary is, before you start dipping into the free agent waters. But I think it points to maybe this is just the right time to give, Shaw or Triantos or someone like that the opportunity to win a job out of spring training and maybe fill in for the injured Nico Hoerner for however long. I mean, you would assume now that, like, since there is no timeline, you're going to assume that April's probably out of the question, right? I mean, I don't think not having a timeline and the surgery just having happened is pointing to, oh yeah, you'll be ready for spring training. So
yeah, I mean that's obviously a concerning if you don't have Nico Hoerner available for opening day, and as Patrick, like you said, with the Cubs being locked in across the at all positions on the field, whether it's because of no trade clauses, big contracts, or young players emerging, Nico would have seemed to be one of the top trade candidates that the Cubs could have used in potential deals and in trades this offseason. Him going through this surgery, I don't think it's like a non-zero chance that he gets traded this offseason, but it's going to be very tough to trade someone coming off a surgery, a right flexor tendon surgery, and because it's not a common surgery in position players, also provides like I think that's also probably why the timeline, there is no timeline. I think it's because you're sitting there like, there's not really a whole lot of precedent for it.
You also weren't trading, like, even if you did trade him this offseason, even if there was no surgery, you weren't trading him at the peak of his worth, his value. And now this added on to it certainly doesn't help. So I don't know that anything is necessarily worth it for the Cubs at this point.
Yeah, not on that front. No, I mean, I wouldn't. Obviously, like you said, at this point, you're trading from an all-time low pretty much for the player, and then on top of that, the lack of clarity on when he's going to be available. So
yeah, no, I agree with you guys, because unless someone is really buying into the fact or the idea that he's going to make a full recovery, be the same Nico, maybe even better next year, unless the team is really, really faithful in that, you're selling him you'd be trading him at a pretty low value right now. Jed Hoyer estimated that Hoerner, again, speaking to reporters in San Antonio, estimated that Hoerner had been dealing with the injury for about half the season, and they kind of knew surgery might be a possibility once the season ended. The type of procedure he needed was ultimately a good scenario in Hoyer's eyes. Obviously, it stinks that there is no timeline. He might not be ready for opening day, but a good scenario in Hoyer's eyes. One of the other parts of that caught my eye reading some of the stories that came out of San Antonio last night was obviously his mention of prospects Matt Shaw and James Triantos. And so this is his quote: "When I look at where we are for next year, we have multiple corner outfielders who can step in if someone goes down. We have infielders who can step up. It is really nice to have that kind of depth. When you talk about farm systems, a lot of times they're talking about guys in high A, low A. It's great to have that pipeline, but you're talking about non-usable pieces in the big leagues. Our guys are rapidly becoming usable major league depth." I think the fact that you have Michael Busch, who has second base experience, is good. The fact that you have Isaac Paredes, who has second base experience, is good. But I do also like that he mentions Matt Shaw and James Triantos as part of the depth. And he mentions them, and it's not saying like, oh, these are prospects. We might be a little bit away from seeing them.
Sure. But
these are really highly earning prospects. Like, no, these guys could be ready to go as depth pieces as needed. Should Nico Hoerner have to miss a start of the season or whatever, right? That's obviously a good thing. And that doesn't mean they won't trade a Matt Shaw. That doesn't mean they won't trade a James Triantos this offseason. But if you do go into next year with Nico Hoerner not ready to go to begin the year, it is nice to know that they are looking at these guys, Matt Shaw and James Triantos, as real depth pieces and not just guys moving up the ladder in the minors.
Yeah, I mean, you reach that point with prospects, hopefully, where they aren't just this abstract idea of potential and they're ready to contribute. So the fact that Hoyer is mentioning these guys by name, big, sort of idea of whatever this guy could be one day, and actually viewing them as, a potential piece for this 2025 team. I think that's a great sign, obviously, for those guys. And obviously, you'd rather not have Nico Hoerner available, but you have options that are already in your system. And like you said, with the versatility of Bush and Paredes, that's also, an option, but then that creates more holes, especially at third base. It creates kind of a need over there if it's Paredes. So, I mean, plenty of options at first base with what they already have. But yeah, I mean, I love hearing those names, and maybe it's the right time for a shot from one of those guys. Who knows?
Anything, Patrick, on that? You got
no.
No, I mean, I will say that if it's like shorter term, that Nico's out, like he misses a couple weeks or whatever, like you could be looking at like a Miles Mastrobuoni being a guy, and they're like, the options aren't. There are other options that aren't as like sexy to Cubs fans. That
Miles Mastrobuoni is essentially player or like position player version of Rob Zastryzny.
But I mean that he's still on the 40-man, obviously.
Yep.
Whether they decide to tender him a contract or not later in the month is still up for debate, but could still be around as a depth piece and could potentially be, if they want to go that route and not add Matt Shaw or James Triantos to the 40-man roster right away. That's a route they could potentially take. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best route they could take, but it's another possible route.
Well, and maybe this is like sort of a smaller reason as to why they made the decision on, Nick Madrigal that they did to keep him on the 40-man. I mean, it's not the ideal decision that I would make, but, depth is depth. So,
yeah. No, I think I do think we're all kind of in agreement that this does change the calculus. And we knew this weeks ago when the surgery news came out, that it does change the calculus of the Cubs offseason, because they can't just run it back with the same group. And because they're locked in so much, it does make it to where Jed Hoyer, and I said this yesterday, Jed Hoyer is going to have to be creative to find upgrades across the position player group, potentially trading Nico Hoerner, a Gold Glove defender, a above-average hitter, young. I think he's still 27 maybe, and on a contract that's not super long and also not super expensive. Like, that could have been a really good trade piece for teams out there.
That's an attractive asset, across baseball. There aren't too many teams that wouldn't want that. So.
Exactly. And so that could have been a route they took, and now they're kind of sitting here. I wouldn't say that Jed Hoyer was ever like really pushing to trade Nico Hoerner, because if you're going to trade him, you need to be sure that whatever you're replacing him with not only meets the value he gives you, but exceeds that.
Right.
And there's no guarantee that they would have. And again, cheap contract, a really respected player in that locker room. Like, he fits in well and fits into what they want to do. Great jawline. I think he got a haircut towards the end of the year, but also great hair. Like, he's had great hair in the past. The long locks, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I do.
So that I wouldn't say that Jed Hoyer was ever truly looking to trade Nico Hoerner, pushing to trade Nico Hoerner, but he would have been one of their top trade candidates. He probably would have been arguably their top trade candidate this offseason. And now you're looking at like that avenue's basically been blocked off at this point.
Yep. It's over.
It's over.
It's over.
That's all you got?
Yeah.
That's great analysis from our friend Patrick Norton.
You're welcome.
We're going to get into a little bit more of what Jed Hoyer said, but first I got to hit you with a couple more reads from our sponsors. Let me talk to you about Empire Today, because with Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low-price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats. But Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, speed, so competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise the lowest prices, because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. They keep shopping for Floor Simple with a curated product selection Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need and not overwhelm you with a bunch of choices and subs. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in, and their product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. Their virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They also service their own warranties, so if an issue does arise, you just call Empire and they'll service that warranty themselves, so you won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Go ahead and schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
My brother got Empire today. I'm not joking. He got it
Empire today, $350 off, right?
Yep.
Great timing.
Just use that code CHGO.
CHGO.
We'll have Patrick's brother on here someday, and he can tell us about how much that discount saved him on flooring.
He's got to make a profile picture for a Chicago Cub, and then we'll have him on.
Sure. Let me also tell you about our friends at Sunnyside. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. It's a place where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. Sunnyside has everything you need to elevate your summer, your fall, your winter, your spring, all year long. Sunnyside is your one-stop shop for all your cannabis needs. It has an expertly curated menu with over 100 strains to choose from, plus easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Sunnyside is Illinois' favorite dispensary with locations in the city, like Wrigleyville and River North. Got them in the suburbs, and you got them as far north as South Beloit and as far south as Champaign. If you're just starting out, Sunnyside has expert guidance and brands they know you'll love, like Good News and Mindy's. And if you're a pro, they've got you covered with over 100 strains on the menu and new ones added weekly. They know you'll love Cresco and Florical's incredible quality and consistent products. It's easy to order online, but if you're an in-store kind of person, they are there to help you there as well. Available now is Good News' new limited-time offer, Island Vibes. So go ahead and get that. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. One of the other things that came out from Jed Hoyer talking to the media down in San Antonio at the GM meetings was Cody Bellinger. Obviously, that happened over the weekend. This is the first time he spoke about Cody Bellinger opting back or picking up his player option, opting back into his contract, however you want to phrase it. He's back. And I think something that Jed Hoyer said, and we've kind of talked about this, he used the word clarity.
Right.
And that there was some uncertainty just based on the fact that they didn't know if Cody Bellinger was going to be opting into his contract or becoming a free agent. So with Cody Bellinger opting back in, that does add some clarity. Jed said that the last 7 or so days prior to to Cody Bellinger's decision coming out that he had gotten like an inkling, or even, I don't know if it was like an inkling or basically that Boris told him that Bellinger was going to opt back in. But now they have clarity on their offseason plan. My question to you guys is, you have clarity on what your roster is going to look like. That's what I meant to say. You have clarity on what your roster is going to look like, but how much clarity does that actually add to knowing how you're going to navigate this offseason?
Yeah, like you've talked about already, with so many of these positions already just in stone. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world, obviously, that Cody Bellinger's back, and hopefully he turns back into 2023 Cody Bellinger, and you get the MVP-ish level of production out of him. But if you were hoping for, the Juan Sotos of the world to come walking down to Addison and Clark, that's not happening with Cody Bellinger, still on this roster. And we've talked about this whole, you can't just run it back again with an 83-win team. So you do need to add a star to this team. doing this, having this happen with Bellinger being back. Obviously, he's not to the level of a Juan Soto or that type of player, the Manny Machados of the world, the Tatis, what have you. It creates this situation where, and Hoyer used the word being creative or looking to be creative. You're going to have to get very creative with this roster because you really only have like upwards of top end, probably $50 million, bottom end, maybe 40, 43 to work with now to stay under the luxury tax, if that is the intention of this team this year, because who knows what's coming from up top with the Ricketts. But, you haven't gone over the LT in quite a while now. So
if you want a shot to go in the right direction, you have to move. You have to be willing to move a player that has a no trade, or that you have to be able to get a player to waive their no trade.
Yeah.
Because that's the situation that you've put yourself in. With Ian Happ, who I love. Ian Happ is the best player on the Cubs since the World Series era. I don't think that he gets credit for that or the recognition that he deserves for that.
Yeah,
the consistency
definitely
for it.
Yeah.
But so you have Happ, you have Suzuki. At some point, you need those positions open for the players that you have coming up. Or you have to be willing to deal from the pool of players that you have blocked from coming up.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, figure it out. That's all I'm asking. Figure it out. Ryan, what are the answers?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the no trade clauses, and obviously the players hold the power with that.
Yes.
And Ian Happ is comfortable in Chicago. I think his wife is from Chicago. Is it wife, fiance? I think they've gotten
married. Who cares?
I believe they've gotten married. I think she's from Chicago, and they're comfortable here. He likes playing with the Cubs. He's a well-respected leader in that clubhouse. He spent his whole, obviously, professional career in the organization. That's going to be tough to ask him to waive a no-trade clause.
Sure,
and
that's why they're negotiated in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And Seiya Suzuki as well. I mean, he came here from Japan, and because he felt comfortable enough to make this the place he wanted to play. Obviously, he got paid a lot of money to, but this was the place he wanted to play and felt comfortable. Another guy that's yes, you can broach it, but obviously these guys have the ultimate say in whether they waive the no-trade clause or not. But so I think that's we're all making the same point here is, if those guys didn't have no trade clauses, yes, it's easier to find more avenues to how to upgrade the team and rebuild the team and whatever. With the big contracts, with some of the young guys emerging, just makes it all the more difficult.
It is difficult, and being a general manager of a Major League Baseball team requires difficult decisions.
Exactly.
And so at some point, and I, again, love Ian Happ, I'll stop qualifying my statements, though, with that. Are you moving on from him? You have what this team is capable of, and it's 83 wins because we've seen it the last 2 years, and at some point, 83. God, at some point you have to be willing to make those difficult decisions that puts you either in a tougher situation, or you won't know what you can do until you do something. And the fact that they are locked in stinks for the idea of trying to get better with a simple trade or free agency, because it's, hey, where are we going to put this player? It's not the NFL where you draft a player in the first. You're not drafting best available kind of thing. You're not signing best available
who fits your needs. Right?
Yeah, this is a who fits your needs type of offseason. And at the end of the day, it's where do you put these players? Because you don't have the spot. You're not moving Dansby. You're not, you kind of can't move Nico now. So is third base back open, even though that's a position that they thought that they acquired and got their not another cornerstone, but their future guy there
for the next few years. I think he's got another 3 seasons.
Three, yeah. And so until you until you kind of figure out what's going on and going on with that outfield, you don't know what's going on with any other position on this team. You can't attack anywhere else on the field except for pitching, because pitching is the pitching core of this Cubs team is a relatively fluid group.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you get paid what you do if you're Jed Hoyer and you're Carter Hawkins. I mean, making difficult decisions like this
and getting them right.
And I obviously a lot of credit to him for setting it up this way with the deals for those extensions for Hap and Nico when they happened, because they were looking at it from the 2024 lens, those are really team-friendly deals. Like, either one of those guys could probably make more money than they are making this next year and the ensuing years in the open market right now. So those are still attractive deals for other teams. Seiya probably a little less so, just because of the injury problems that we've been encountering pretty much every season with him. But I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to make some really difficult decisions this offseason, or if you're just content with this and run it back and live on the margins and whatever, then I don't think that's what a number 3 market team does. But if that's what you're willing to live with, if you're Jed Hoyer, I guess your table is set and you
have to be right.
Yep.
Right? Like when the playoffs are, when it feels kind of like a make or break playoff season at this point for 2025, like whatever you do, you have to be right.
You have to be right, and you've put yourself in that position though, because correct me if I'm wrong, he's going into the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
He is a lame duck general manager as far as we're concerned right now, because it's who knows if he'll be back. And I bet that he'd like to tell you that he thinks that he'll be back, but if they don't make the playoffs, what is that? Like, that reflection on him is bad.
Yeah.
And I think we're all in agreement on that, but I don't know. And also it should be mentioned, we're talking like, hey, Seiya makes sense. Like, if you can get him to waive it because he's locked himself out of the outfield per se right now. Like, his defense isn't good enough.
He's also your best hitter last year.
Exactly. That's the point. Like, he is your best hitter.
Yeah.
And it's tough to just be like, well, because you don't fit in perfectly in right field and you keep dropping balls and you might have the yips at this point. Rick Ankiel part 2.
I think he got better as the season went on with that.
He didn't have any errors when he became the full-time DH. Yeah, that's
really
a great point,
really
Ryan.
easy to accomplish that.
No, I hear you, man. It's like there's no clear way to upgrade, but I would hold that more towards the position player group, because this is my segue right here. There is ways to upgrade on the pitching side, rotation, bullpen.
Yes.
They have the ability, they have the room, they have financial flexibility to go ahead and make upgrades in there. And so I want to ask you guys, now that free agency has officially begun, as in players can now start signing with any team they would like, who are the realistic free agents that Cubs could target this year, or should target this year? Because we weren't expecting Soto before Bellinger opted back in. Now that he's back, that's
super
probably
not expecting it.
Yeah,
yes.
probably off
What
the
if you trade
table.
Suzuki? Get him to waive that no trade.
Corbin Burns is like the best pitcher on the market, but he might fall out of the Cubs price range. Maybe even Blake Snell, depending on what he's seeking and what he might get, could fall out of what the Cubs could potentially be willing to give him. So I ask you, like, who are the realistic free agents the Cubs should and could go after? John Owen says Snell. Hey, if they want to go after Snell and they're willing to pay maybe a little bit more, then they should.
Sure.
Snell's had back-to-back good years. I know last year he didn't start off as well.
Great track record,
he finished
though,
very
and,
strong, and that was coming off a Cy Young season. So
takes the ball every fifth.
It's possible.
Too, so, yeah.
But for me, for realistic free agent targets, like, I look at Max Fried as a really strong fit.
That's an attractive
for this team.
Yeah.
I get and I don't even say concerns, but I get some, like, hesitation over adding another lefty to the top of your rotation. Obviously, he'd fit in with Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga, and more players are right-handed hitters. That allows other teams to put more right-handed heavy lineups out there. Okay, he's still a really good pitcher. Mm-hmm. You look at just what he did last season. I think he made 28 starts, and he's been – I know he's had – I think 2023 had forearm issues that limited him. And then last year there was another last year there was another smaller forearm thing in the same spot, but not something that cost him so much of the year. But you look at what he did last year. I mean, he doesn't have elite fastball velocity. His average fastball velocity was 93.8 miles per hour. Good, not elite, obviously. But the average exit velocity, he fell in the 95th percentile. He doesn't get a whole lot of whiffs or strikeouts. He's more of a contact-oriented guy, but his barrel rate or opponent's barrel rate against him was 89th percentile at 5%. Hard hit rate was 81st percentile at 34.6%. Ground ball rate was 96th percentile at 59.2%. As far as a profile of a pitcher that fits this team, I get it's a lot of team, but as far as in a vacuum, as far as a profile of a pitcher that would fit a team that's trying to be built on run prevention, a Gold Glove caliber defense, up the middle, a Gold Glove caliber center fielder, a guy in left field who's coming off 3 straight Gold Gloves, a guy in right field who has a Gold Glove to his name in right field, a guy at first base who's improved a ton in just 1 year at first base. To me, a guy who pitches to soft contact and ground ball rate would fit in pretty well with this lineup or with this rotation. Actually, I was looking at MLB trade rumors. They put out their projections for free agents and where they're going to sign. 3 out of the 4 writers predicted him to go to the Cubs at 6 years, $156 million. And I think Fangraphs and The Athletic both had it at 5 years, $140 million for their prediction. Not specifically to the Cubs, but that was what they predict the contract's going to be. I mean, I look at it, and that'd be a good signing for the Cubs this offseason if they went out and got Max Fried at something at that contract level.
I'm not going to hold my breath on it. I mean, Fair? Sure. I also agree that signing a very good starting pitcher would benefit the Cubs, but I also think that there's a chance that they look at this team. I don't know. It to me, it depends on what Craig Counsell's input is on this offseason, and I think it should be pretty large, but I don't know. We'll kind of see. I'll believe it when I see it.
I mean, I'd be ecstatic if that was the move. I have a feeling that the further on we get into this offseason, I think maybe that number jumps up for him.
Possibly, yeah.
Because Corbin Burns is going to probably get $200 million, right? In whatever deal he signs, it's going to be 7 years,
if not,
close to 2. That puts the Cubs out of that possibility because you're talking $30 million, $29 million for a pitcher. You only have about, like we talked about, $50 million to between $42 and $50 million left to even spend in calendar year 2025. I think it's at
47.5 or something below the luxury tax level, and that's obviously without more non-tenders that should be happening later in the month.
Sure.
So there's some more money may open up. I think that 5 for 140 would be $28 million AAV. Looking at Blake Snell, actually, MLB trade rumors has him at 5 years, $160 million would be what their prediction is. Obviously, like I said, they don't predict him going to the Cubs, but that's. I mean, I don't know if that contract fits into what the Cubs are looking for. But like we said, a track record, former Cy Young winner, coming off a really strong second half, another possibility. Any other guys out there in free agency that you look at and say, this is a realistic target and the Cubs probably should go and get that guy?
I think given Jed Hoyer's penchant for bringing in guys that want to turn a prove-it deal into, a big free agent splash maybe in 1 or 2 seasons, Walker Buehler, I think, fits that bill. The overall numbers in the regular season were not great. The FIP was higher than the ERA, and the ERA was high. So, but what we saw in the postseason, those after he got rocked by the Padres. But what we saw in the postseason, those next 2 starts, I mean, that was a flash. That he basically got himself at least a large annual value prove it deal, if not maybe a 3-year deal with a team that's like really desperate for pitching. But you put together 9 innings scoreless with 11 strikeouts against those teams in that situation, especially in the World Series there. Yeah, I mean, sign me up for whatever that version of Walker Buehler is. Give me that, because he's obviously got the track record in previous seasons. I know he hasn't pitched a ton in recent years, but you go back to 2021, you go back to that year, 16-4, sub-3 ERA. What's not to like there? 2-time All-Star, 4th in Cy Young voting.
Shane Bieber is also kind of fits that narrative too, in that he's coming off of an injury, was performing well in the start that he had, right? Was it just 1 start?
Might have been 2. Might have been, but it was minimal. We'll say minimal.
But he looked great in the time that he did play. That the Cubs were linked to in the offseason before.
Sure.
Where it was like, hey, this is a guy who you could add to the rotation and really kind of shore it up. I'd be willing to kind of go down that avenue, like regardless of the injury history, because that's kind of, those are the moves that you expect Jed to make. He probably, and by probably I mean definitely would be a more inexpensive option than Fried.
Yeah.
At this point, because of the elbow issue, but also Kyle Hendricks. What about Kyle Hendricks?
I mean, I guess technically he's a realistic target.
He is a free agent too, so he fits what we're talking about.
He is a free agent that's not going to make a lot of money this offseason. That's a realist. That fits into what we're saying, and
he gives up a lot of home runs, which also fits into what Jed Hoyer loves to acquire.
No, I think with Walker Buehler and Shane Bieber fit into that category of like bounce back candidates with really good upside.
Yeah.
But upside is also upside, and I look at Max Fried as he probably provides you more certainty.
Set it and forget it. Yeah,
right. He's been a pretty big like building block of that Braves rotation for however many years it's been now. He's been really good. I think he's a 2-time All-Star at this point.
Can I interrupt you really quick?
Go ahead.
Just because there's a comment there that says years of poor decisions, mismanagement, and ineptitude have gotten us into this state of perpetual mediocrity with zero flexibility. And this is exactly where we're going to stay for years to come.
That is
you can post this on any of the Chicago sports podcasts at this point because, yes, I mean, I said that about the Bears earlier this week. Anyway, sorry. Back to your point.
No, I don't even remember where I was going with it because you had to remind me about the Bears. That's
you're welcome.
This is the Cubs.
Hey, nice hat.
The CHGO Cubs podcast is a nice reprieve from
having to think about the Bears. Yeah,
and
Mizzou football and Mizzou basketball. So that whatever. I did wear the hat out of solidarity because it was better than wearing the Bears hat and having to think about that game on Sunday.
Better decision. Yes.
Another guy I would look at. Or another guy I'd like that's been on the radar, right? As far as guys the Cubs could target in free agency, a guy that was people were talking about trading for him last offseason and even into this season. Tanner Scott had a really good year. He's had a couple really good years. As far as the Athletic and Fangraphs projections, the Athletic says 4 years, $64 million. Fangraphs predicts 4 years, $60 million, and I believe MLB Trade Rumors predicts. Give me a sec. Hold on.
Great podcasting from Ryan.
I pressed Scott. I searched Scott, and it just kept coming up with Scott Boras. Oh. Got to go with Tanner. Trade Rumors predicts Tanner Scott 4 years, $56 million.
Another guy that they were linked to early in the year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is a guy that fits in there, lefty, has had success in the back end of the bullpen. Is that 4 years or 5 years? Was it 5 years? I said that trade room or 4 years. They all predicted 4 years. Are you guys down to give a reliever, a good reliever, someone that has proven to be pretty solid recently, Are you down to give a reliever a 4-year deal with that amount of money?
I am, because at this point you need something, and I'm tired of there have been years where it's worked. There have been stretches where it's worked, where the constant rebuilding of a pen has been nice. I'm good also having just a reliable arm in the bullpen from time to time.
Right.
And I like, look at the Yankees, for example. Yankees fans have turned on Clay Holmes because Clay Holmes struggled by the end of the year, but Clay Holmes was a reliable pitcher for them for the last couple of years. And I feel like going into every single offseason where it's like priority number 2 has to be rebuilding the bullpen isn't really a healthy way to keep this going. Maybe you don't want to invest a ton of money into it, but at some point you have to.
I mean, yeah, you have to try something different, I think, anyway, with the pen, other than just this whole let's throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what works out, rebuilding the pen from scratch pretty much every year.
Yeah.
Because, Alzoy's not going to be there. You've moved on from Almonte. There's just it maybe it's like an across the MLB thing where, legit like shutdown closers aren't really a thing anymore because there's just not that many of them out there anymore. But stability is a great thing to have when you have a 3-2 or 1-run lead going into the 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever, what have you. So, yeah, anything to prevent those 1-run losses or, just those debilitating, comebacks that like the bullpen was at times so terrible on this team last year, and it's the most disheartening thing that can really happen to a baseball fan watching that type of stuff fall apart. But you knew it going in that it wasn't going to be great because you didn't invest.
Watching 20 blown saves by the end of like May.
Yeah. It's really it's so frustrating. And like, if you don't address it, it's just, you're not doing your job.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's why I keep saying like the bullpen obviously has the flexibility of like, they don't have guys there in long-term contracts, has the financial flexibility, rotation in the same way. Like those are obvious areas that they should address this offseason and have avenues for upgrades in there. And then you add a rotation, you add another guy to this rotation. You're talking about like Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks,
right?
Hayden Wesneski, those kind of guys that they don't have to be rotation guys. They could be used in the bullpen. They could be used as depth pieces. That strengthens everything. And then obviously addressing the bullpen. Maybe it's not Tanner Scott. I'm not necessarily someone that wants to give big contracts to relievers. Mm-hmm. I know the Cubs haven't done that, and I don't see them really
won
changing.
83 games.
I don't see them changing that stance.
Sure,
but maybe it is a route they can go down and have someone that, if it's someone they feel like they can rely on to do that year over year. But as we know, bullpens are the most volatile position in baseball. It just happens. That ends it for our TV broadcast portion of this. But if you want, we're going to stick around a little bit longer. If you want to listen to the end of the conversation, hop over to allchgo.com and check out the rest of our show. Before we get to that, I got to tell you guys about the Die Hard program. You join our Die Hard program. You get access to our Discord lounge, which I'm in there. Patrick's in there. We're always,
I'm supposed to be running it. I'm not joking. I'm supposed to be in charge of the Discord lounge. Don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
Neglected that.
Okay.
So.
But you do hop in there every once in a while. And you get access to that. You can talk Cubs, Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, White Sox if you like, Chicago Sky, Red Stars. I guess they're Stars now.
Just the Stars, yes.
Yeah,
no more red.
Just the Stars. And you can go all in that Discord. And there's a whole bunch of different channels. Fantasy football, NFL, NBA, whatever you got. I feel like we have a channel for everything. You get 20% off merch, 20% off the events. Patrick, you've been to a lot of our Bears events.
I'm also in charge of our events.
How fun are those?
They're the best things in the world.
Best in the city, to be exact.
Best in the city?
Best in the city, to be exact.
Okay. But they're also, but like the city is in the world and on a grander scale, the world. but also yes,
Think
best in the
picture.
city. Thank you, Sarah. Bears tailgates are so fun. We do them at the corner of Wabash and Cermak for every home game. I will be there this upcoming Sunday on the 10th. I will be there at 8:00. I'll be there around like 8:45. But we are there at 7:30. Greg Braggs will be setting up at about 2:30. So go there, bother him. It'll be fun. All good stuff. And then
you got Blackhawks takeovers, Bulls takeovers.
Already sold out our first Blackhawks
sold out the
takeover
Blackhawks
for the
one,
year.
Eventually Cubs will
have
takeovers again. A lot of great stuff there. You get a free shirt when you sign up. You get access to all credential reporting. So from myself,
Ryan's newsletter,
my newsletter every Friday that
Adam
drops.
Hogue's newsletter, Jay Zawoski's newsletter,
and
Duber's
and obviously a lot of other diehard exclusive content. Yeah, all the beats: Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, and if you like the White Sox, you can also get access to that as well. A lot of great things that come with our diehard program. So if you sign up, go to allchgo.com/join-diehard, I believe is the right link. You can go in there, find all the information, and sign up for that. Now back to now that I've gone through the diehard, now back to just
let's yell about the Cubs a little bit more.
Ending this conversation as far as realistic free agent targets for the Cubs. We've talked about it already on this show. We've mentioned it throughout the offseason that catcher is just not a position that the Cubs can go into next season firmly believing that they have what they need in-house. Like, Miguel Amaya had a good couple-month run there, and credit to him, and pitchers love pitching to him. They will bring him up, give him unprompted praise for what he does behind the plate as far as game calling and other kinds of things. But the offense matters. Just the fact that he's young and just a lot of his development is coming at the big league level. You can't bank on the second half being what Miguel Amaya is going to be moving forward. We already talked about Christian Bethancourt has been non-tender. Well, he was he cleared waivers and elected free agency, and it's he's again someone that could be brought back, but I don't know if pairing those two again for a full season is the right route to go on. Moises Ballesteros maybe just too young right now, and he may not be a catcher at the major league level. Like, there's still questions about that. So the Cubs don't have necessarily the catching picture that's ideal for this team trying to make the playoffs this season.
If you're Jed Hoyer and you are trying to keep your job for the future, you are in a pretty bad spot right now.
So I will kind of turn it to looking at Danny Jansen. He's someone that was linked to the Cubs, like another guy that was linked to the Cubs, like before the season, throughout there. I don't know if it was before the season, but even like
definitely the trade deadline.
Yeah, definitely the trade deadline, and even before that, when the catching group of Yan Gomes and Miguel Amaya just was performing like among the worst in baseball. Like, that happened, and Danny Jansen was talked about in that sense of maybe he's someone that could be brought in. Trade rumors projects him at 2 years, $20 million. I'm looking for, I think 2 years, $14 million is something where the Athletic or Fangraphs put it at. He was on track this season to probably cash in a lot. I think before June, it was like a 157 WRC plus.
Yep.
And then after that, it was a pretty steep offensive drop off. Is that someone? I mean, he's 29 years old. Is that if he's someone that decides to, or the Cubs decide to go after? Is that? I mean, do you look at that? Do you look at that as a guy that fits in with Miguel Amaya as a tandem and makes that group stronger?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like what Amaya brings to this team via the setup, the catching that he's providing for the Cubs starting pitchers, and they love pitching to him. That is probably the most important thing that a catcher can do on any team, and I don't think like necessarily you should be looking for your catcher to be one of your best offensive players. But yeah, Danny Jansen would be a huge upgrade in that tandem, and I think you should be, if you brought him in, you're looking for production that is better than whatever Gomes gave you 2 years ago, right? Like, it's they're in such a tough spot, though, that Patrick, like you said, terrible spot for Jed Hoyer to be in, but you're basically in the same spot that you were last offseason. It's all the same question.
And that's exactly why it's a terrible spot to be in.
Yeah.
Well, and
it is. I agree.
It's like waking up.
But you also put yourself in that spot based on the moves.
Right.
You've made.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Over the last 5 or 4 years that you've been in charge. Anyway, the Danny Jansen thing also fits because for two reasons. A, you don't know for certain how anyone's going to do next year, but you definitely don't know how Miguel Amaya will look.
Right.
You'd like to think that he picks up right back where he left off, and he did slump a little bit in September, but he picked it up for the end of the year again. But that August was really special, like towards the end of July. What was the trip specifically, or there was some event that triggered him kind of taking off again, and you had written about it in your newsletter, and I forgot about it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Thanks for reading it closely.
Sorry for not caring. But it
was early July. It was like eliminating. He had like a 3-day break.
Yeah,
and it was like involved eliminating the leg kick that he used in his batting stance, and not having a leg kick, a little more like a shift, like heel shift, toe tap type thing, and a little bit wider of a base, and that you saw the offense emerge from there.
So you'd like to see him again start 2025 where he left off in 2024. That will be a big key for the Cubs. But Danny Jansen would hopefully provide you a little insurance in the event that it doesn't start as peachy, or as, what did John Lester say, peaches and roses? If it doesn't start all peaches and roses for Miguel Amaya next year, then you might. Danny Jansen doesn't have to be he's going to catch, twice a week or anything like that. Like, he can take a more significant role too. Definitely. The second part of that is he's from Elmhurst, and we know how much Chicago sports teams love signing players. When they're backed into a corner, they will sign as many local products as humanly possible. And Danny Jansen fits that part too.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's Carson Kelly, whether I think Travis d'Arnaud had his option declined.
Carson Kelly, also a local guy.
Is he? I did not know that, but like, there's, again, it's not like there's these great, super great, like team-changing catching options out there, unless you go and trade for one, right? There may be someone. Logan O'Hoppe is someone that we keep hearing the Cubs probably wouldn't be the only team interested in trading for a guy like that, but there are ways to upgrade in the catching position. It may not be this super big upgrade, but like we've said, it is a position that needs to be addressed, just because the Cubs can't go in to next year with complete faith that they've got enough in-house right now to get through the whole year. Yeah. I think that's where we're at.
And when we went into this today, it was, hey, let's find a couple of realistic, free agency options. Notice how we only said pitchers and a couple of catchers, because they are locked in across the board everywhere else, and we won't know what else they can do until later on. And who knows when later on is.
And speaking of which, I mean, when you finish, where did they finish? What, 20th in MLB in home runs? Something like that, right?
20th, I think. They're tied for 20th or something like that. Yeah.
And like middle of the road in OPS. Why not go get a guy that hit 44 home runs last year, and he's a free agent and he's 30. Hey,
I know who you're talking about. Say his name.
Go do that. No, Anthony Santander would be. How good would that look in the middle of this lineup? I know it'd be hard to get him in the lineup with the way it's constructed
the slug
right now.
For sure. The slug, the home run power.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's we've talked about that. Like, that's something that the Cubs have been missing, is the more consistent slug closer to the top of the league. They don't have that, obviously, up and down the roster. They don't have anyone that's hitting 30 home runs right now, or at least within the last couple of years, they don't have anyone doing that. That is something that we feel like they need just more of, is just consistent power throughout the lineup, because when Jed Hoyer says, the best teams blow people out, that's how you do it, is with extra base hits, with home runs, with slug.
And how many times did they blow people out this past year?
Not a whole lot. I felt like every game was pretty close.
Right.
Kind of like how 2023 went, right? So I get what you guys are saying. I think that's just the main point for us. Is just
highlighted the issues with your bullpen even more.
Yeah, exactly. You're using them a lot more.
Yeah.
Because guys, when you look at 2023, those like group of guys that were David Ross's most trusted guys started to wear down towards the end of the year or even get hurt. So I hear you for sure. And like adding Anthony Santander to this lineup with his power potential would be good. I think it just keeps coming back to the point of like
flexibility.
It's Jed Hoyer's job to make these decisions, to make the right decisions, to put the right group out there to make the playoffs next year, because it feels like, and Tom Ricketts didn't say this, but it feels like Jed Hoyer's job is on the line right now for next year.
Does Jed Hoyer know that?
I think he has to.
I think he at least understands that winning feels pretty freaking important in 2025.
Yeah.
And whether you trust him or not to be the guy to have the big offseason to actually get the job done and make the playoffs next year, I would say that I believe Jed Hoyer understands that winning is pretty freaking important next year. I don't think he's blind to that fact.
No, sure. No, not at all. I think back to the Santander thing though, like just what a 40 home run guy does just for the lineup overall. He makes everybody else better. Yeah. It's the whole protection thing. It's the whole seeing better pitches. And like you mentioned, they haven't had that guy in so long. There's nobody is frightened by like going into a series with the Cubs. Nobody's frightened by the lineup. They're just like, oh yeah, 18 homers, 20 homers. Great. Like you're not afraid of that as a starting pitcher.
Cubs batting practice pitchers, I don't even know if they are afraid of the Cubs lineup right now.
It's just underwhelming. I don't know.
No, and that's, like I said, like we're just starting the offseason right now, the full offseason. And this is kind of something that I've said, like when I talked about Jed Hoyer's press conference at the end of the year, didn't really reveal any information or what they're going to do, what the plan is. So it's like, I don't really care about that then. Like if you're not going to reveal your plan, I don't necessarily care about what you say. Now I'm more interested in what do you do this offseason? What actions do you make this offseason to make this ball club a better ball club going into 2025? That's the ultimate barometer, right? Like, I guess the ultimate barometer is if they make the playoffs in 2025, the end of next year.
Sure.
But I think you'd have a lot more comfortability. Cubs fans would have that if he made some bold moves, some creative moves, and gets this on paper, this team into a better position.
Yeah, it's all on the line.
I said multiple times over the last few years that my dying wish would be to see Kyle Hendricks throw a no-hitter, and it never happened.
Did not
and
happen.
I have just realized that the secret it's because he never got to pitch against the Cubs.
Oh, you think
I think then at Wrigley, keep the ball in the park, get a good defense behind him.
Yeah.
His career is not over. All right, I'll back off.
You're really into bringing Kyle Hendricks back.
Yeah. And Rizzo.
And Jason Hayward and all those 2016 guys. You already have
Rob. Rizzo's a tough fit.
Rizzo, yeah, that's the thing. Why can we not make room for Anthony Rizzo? Oh, that's right, because everybody else is locked in. Every other position is locked in. How many more lefty bats could you possibly have?
Yeah,
man. I thought Cody was in Mexico, but we replaced him with Patrick Norton.
Yeah.
That's going to do it
for
today.
Bets for today.
That's going to do it for today's CHGO Cubs podcast. That's Nate. That's Patrick. I'm Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you back here at 11:30 tomorrow. Catch you later.
We all silly like the mayor.